Warning, of course, for what you're about to see.
Don't look at it. Shut your eyes, Mary, and don't look at it no matter what happens.
We're supposed to believe my tits is charming and quaint. Well, it's not. No, I don't care. This is
sick.
Bang! That's your James. Stephanie Sterling. Problem taken care of. Bang! Bang! Of course we're James. Stephanie Sterling. There's a lot more we could talk about. It's long, innit? We could talk about how she constantly equates her idea of physical attractiveness to fatness. We could talk about how she's causing indirect harm through a lot of trans rhetoric. This is what LGBTQ plus people
do.
They incite hatred of people that like Hogwarts Legacy.
I don't f***ing care.
I don't give a f***. I have to incite hatred in the hopes that some harm comes to them. Although, if I'm honest, I've wanted violence. If I were there, I'd sort it all the f*** out. Bang! Bang! I could do it, but I don't want to have to talk about f***ing Hogwarts. I want to get a McDonald's to show you my field of experience, fatness, which not J.K. Rowling are going to take away from me. It's my fatness.
I'm not listening to you. You don't believe in science. That's probably why we never win. We never win because you are fat.
I can't do it anymore. I can't. I've been eating too many red pills. Somebody help me before I become too based.
You say it like it's a bad thing.
Damn, Fred, I thought you could handle your drugs. Well, apparently I can't handle red pills. And I thought acid and shrooms opened up my mind enough as it is. Who would have ever thought it wasn't the DMT that opened my third eye? It was the red pill. Believe me, this is a road I never wanted to take. So you know when Daddy Fred is the one talking about this stuff, it must mean the woke crowd finally got to him. And correct, they did.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin'
games
gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
You guys know me very well. I can't leave a bad take unchecked. So I knew what I had to do. I had to gobble down that entire vial of red pills in order to approach this horrendous take by Jim Stephanie Sterling.
I'm sorry, sir. You can't park your van on the diving board.
I didn't want to do it because every single time I cover Jim Stephanie Sterling, I have to question my own politics. When all I want to do is play video, which is basically what all gamers want to do. Steer clear of this bullshit and just enjoy video. But no, we can't even do that anymore. We have to address the political climate in video games now. Because if we don't, then we're not considered allies of the trans movement. We're now obligated to address the quote-unquote issues with video games that offends the LGBT crowd. Staying quiet and minding our own business is not enough for them anymore. They want you to validate that what they believe is true. This is a movement I've not felt since I was a child, back when the religious folks were the ones attacking every form of media. But now the crowd that used to fight off accusations of video games causing violence are the same crowd accusing video games of causing bigotry. That's how crazy these folks have gotten. This side to Daddy Frit you're seeing is all their fault. 100%. You think I like taking a risk like this for my channel? Especially after just barely getting out of my shadow ban a few months ago? I'm definitely going to be alienating some of my viewers after this video, because I'm going to be talking about the subject as real as I can possibly get with you. Screw the risks, let's make YouTube fun again.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Well, I wrote this song for the Christian youth. I want to teach kids the Christian truth.
So Hogwarts Legacy, a game I never actually cared about, because the Harry Potter IP in general is pretty cringe. You really think a Harry Potter game with the Ubisoft gameplay formula is something I was ever hyped for? Absolutely not. Either way, I still received 2 codes for this game anyway. So I thought to myself, oh, what the hell? I'll try it out. And as for the second code, I gave that to a trans friend.
Thanks for the game, Freddy. It will.
And I'll be honest, there's not much to write home about when it comes to this game. It does everything I absolutely hate about AAA games, which is basically feel like an offline MMO. Keep the player engaged in doing activities, and apparently you've done your job as a developer. The game definitely has a very very slow first few hours, but once it picks up, combat gets a lot more spicy, and exploration continues to stay somewhat interesting. But like most AAA molds developers fill in these days, it's plagued with everything I don't like. Constant stopping to talk. Dialogue that you know the player's gonna be spamming Y to skip. An ugly, cluttered UI with activities and tasks to be completed, and cutscenes up the ass. Oh yeah, and real-world waiting times like mobile games do for things to be completed, like making goddamn potions. But I'm gonna stick to it, I'm gonna beat it, because it's starting to pick up for me. In all honesty, this game feels like every other game I've played for the past 5 years. Most AAA games these days are just slightly above mid, which is where I would place this game. But if you're cringe and you like Harry Potter, then I can imagine you're drooling over this. Meanwhile, I'm trying to stay awake while playing it. You could honestly slap any intellectual property on this mold, and nothing would significantly change. The devs played it as safe as possible with every gameplay mechanic, never daring to experiment or try something interesting. But at the very least, as a complete package, it is not a bad game. This game definitely contains as much content as it can for your money. You won't feel like you wasted your money or were ripped off. You will, however, probably forget that you ever bought it. Because if I'm being quite honest with you, there's only one memorable thing about this game, and that's the controversy around it, which boosted sales and people's perception of the game. Well, that and people born in the late 90s are still obsessed with Harry Potter. As mid as the game can be to me, I knew it was going to be a massive success. So I don't know why the devs felt the need to pander to the trans community, because in my personal opinion, it made them look worse, adding in a token character as some sort of apology for nothing they ever did wrong. It made no sense to pander to a community that was trying to boycott your game and encourage people not to buy it. The minute you did that, you gave them validation and assuming you are in the wrong when you never were. Either way, I didn't see much politics in this game because I spent most of my time spamming Y to skip all dialogue. I do not care. I want to play a wizard. I don't want to play like I'm on Twitter. And in that department, this game succeeds very well. You feel like a wizard, and doing wizarding stuff is pretty amusing. However, I would have enjoyed it much more had it been a multiplayer game, because it feels like a giant offline MMO. Imagine how cool it would have been if all those other NPCs flying on brooms were actually other players. Yeah, I know, it sounds like I'm trashing the game, but in all honesty, I don't think the game is trash. Just painfully above mid. I just want to make it clear to people I'm not fanboying over this game. Those are just my initial impressions. I wasn't willing to talk about the game without giving it a chance first. Hell, I even went out of my way to buy an extra 2TB NVMe just to stuff this game on because it ran like ass on an HDD. Which is more than you can say about Jim Sterling, whose job it is to review video games.
So I gave my sermon an urban kick. My rhymes are fly, my beats are sick.
We are living through some very strange times, and whenever I try to pinpoint when it started happening, it always comes down to 2016. For some reason, game journalists no longer feel like doing their jobs. They prohibit themselves from reviewing products based on their political beliefs. So it's no wonder Jim Sterling fans have been leaving in droves. What used to be a channel people would tune into for industry critique or game reviews has turned into something straight out of a Tumblr page.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Jim Sterling thinks that by boycotting the game and not buying it, they're taking an appropriate stance, yet they're sitting here making a 20+ minute long video covering the game, unable to realize they're helping it by doing so. It doesn't matter that you didn't buy the game, Jim. It doesn't matter that you didn't write a review. Covering the game is just as good anyway, especially with your reach, as much as it's declining. So Jimbo here, by making a video in the first place, has already destroyed their own point. And that video in question is this one. And I'm glad to see the dislikes are finally overtaking.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Cause it was abysmal. Quite possibly the worst video of the year so far. Jim basically stuck a note to his back that said kick me, and everybody did it. It's a 26-minute long nightmare about how unethical it is to play and support Hogwarts Legacy. And my personal recommendation is that you listen to this video in the background and not watch it with your own two eyes. I apologize for the eyesore you're about to see, but just keep in mind, as bad as it is for your own two eyes, remember, You're not the one who had to sit here for 24 hours editing, looking at it. I put my own well-being on the line to deliver you this salt. So I'm gonna do something I normally don't ask people to do. I'm gonna ask you to subscribe now instead of at the end of the video, because I'm not quite sure you're gonna make it there.
You think PCP, some horse tranquilizer something?
For Tanga.
Got stuff that'll whack your brain permanently.
My crew is big and it keeps getting bigger. That's because Jesus Christ is bigger.
Nah,
I don't care.
it's stupid. Harry Potter is stupid, and it's about time someone said it was bad, because nobody in the history of ever has ever suggested that Harry Potter is bad. I'm a trendsetter.
That's nasty.
Oh, great. Just what I wanted. Jim Sterling showing us how he unethically consumes large amounts of Monster Energy drink. Isn't your figure already disturbing enough as it is? Do you have to show us what you do to maintain it?
No, but it is stupid though.
Right?
We're supposed to believe that wizards and the wizarding world is so much superior to the muggles, right? We've got phones. They use owls.
Get off the stage, you drunk bastard!
Chunks.
Jim, be honest with me. Did you put a little boop in that monster? Are you drunk? Why are you attempting to perform an Amy Schumer stand-up comedy skit? Stop! Stop it right now! You do not have as good of material as you think you do!
Right? If f***ing Hagar the Horrible, right, bicycled into my f***ing house and went, "Oh, you're a wizard, Stephanie," I'd probably be excited at first. I'd be all, "Oh, that's brilliant, Hagar the Horrible. How do we go? Am I gonna go in a car? What? No! We don't ride cars in the wizarding world. We fly about on flippity-doos." What's a flippity-doo? Well, first of all, you gotta get yourself an 8-legged one. We're not gonna get on. Right, I insist on bringing my 3DS. Hagar, have you got wall chargers? What's wall chargers? Oh dear.
I'm losing money on this deal.
It's worth every penny.
Stop it! Stop right now! Please! Spare us! Most importantly, spare me! No amount of editing I can do will ever make that entire routine funny! You're supposed to try out material in private, not publish it in your videos! I don't care what a single lefty ever tells me again. Punching down is truly what makes comedy hilarious. Cause right now you're witnessing the results of woke comedy.
You do for entertainment. Oh, it's brilliant. We eat sweets that make you do elephant noises. F***ing what? And what's the shit with the all flavour beans, right? I could, right, get a McDonald's.
You'd like that, fag. Sorry.
Or I could eat bonbons that taste of literal sick and mucus. And we're supposed to think that this is charming and quaint. Well, it's
not.
This isn't funny! And what, are we supposed to believe this is funny? Well, it's not. Before you completely ruin comedy for me, I'm gonna skip the rest of this nonsense because it goes on for 3 minutes and 26 seconds. And not once will you chuckle. See, I'm all aboard for roasting the Harry Potter franchise. I think it's cringe. The potential to make me laugh my ass off was there, but great. Now Jim has completely ruined that for me, ruining my eyes, my political beliefs, and now my sense of humor. Great, what's next? Anyways, let's get to a point in the video where it actually starts mattering.
J.K. Rowling is a transphobe. This is a fact.
What are you gonna do about it? Huh?
It's a fact I've never seen disputed in good faith, only challenged by fellow transphobes who have a pre-baked line since these people read from the same script.
Alright, so yeah, this is probably where I'm gonna receive a lot of heat, but if I'm going to talk about this honestly and as realistic as I can, then I must say it. The type of transphobe you consider J.K. Rowling to be is simply not the most immoral, irreprehensible thing I've ever seen. I simply don't believe the type of transphobia J.K. Rowling holds is ever going to physically harm you or the community in any sort of way. Your lives are not going to be made harder by this woman. While there are actual legislators out there who don't believe you should exist and have power and office, instead you point at the woman that made the wizard book as the worst one. Does she hold beliefs that go against you? Yes, she does. But the furthest it goes ends in disagreement. And yet for some reason, those disagreements are taken a lot more personal than politicians who actually want to pass laws to prohibit your existence. And unlike a lot of those politicians, J.K. Rowling actually does support the majority of the LGBT movement. Granted, not every single aspect of it, but is that really the most criminal thing? Every single time I see an article about a controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling, it's not problems with the LG or B in the movement, it's always with the T. And when you read these articles and see what it is that she said, it's so goddamn tame. You would have to be clinically online for this to be the worst thing you ever read. But unfortunately, the T and the LGB movement has increasingly grown obsessed with what J.K. Rowling thinks of them, to the point now that evidence for them is screenshots of who she follows, tweets she likes, and people she's taken pictures with. Hell, but don't take my word for it. This is what Jim Sterling does exactly in this video.
What did she say exactly that's transphobic? Rowling couches her hatred in plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. That's basically Jim Sterling admitting, yeah, I can't actually prove she is what I'm claiming. I can only give examples of why I think she is that. You know it's not good when your video starts off telling people, yeah, I don't have the best evidence.
But her daily obsessive takes on us, her constant comparisons of trans women to men, her verbatim repetition of gender-critical talking points makes her feelings clear.
Daily tweets! Yet can only show tweets from 2 years ago. Come on, really, Jim? You're sitting there claiming she's the one obsessed with the trans community? Are you sure it's not the other way around? Because when I log on to Twitter and I simply type in J.K. Rowling and take a scroll, there are people literally wishing death upon her, obsessed with statements and tweets from years ago or just about anything in general, she says. They even get pissed at her because she doesn't want trans women in the same prison cell as other women. God forbid. That is literally an issue they take up with her. The obsessive nature over J.K. Rowling is unhealthy. The only thing she really does is confront trans issues that the trans community is not willing to discuss. And when you do read the statements, they don't exactly read out like the most horrendous thing imaginable. At some point, you're going to have to get over it. You live in a world surrounded by people who don't believe in gender identity and are vocal about it. And a lot of them are nowhere near as tame as J.K. Rowling. I've seen members of the trans community treat their parents who disown them better than they treat J.K. Rowling.
She follows, is best friends with, and outright claims to be one of the many prominent TERFs, trans-exclusive radical feminists these days rebranded to gender criticals.
I'm just saying that when things change this much, this fast, people are allowed to ask, what's up with that? All the babies are in the wrong bodies?
Her slide into open fascism as a result has been horrifying.
Never in my life would I have ever imagined we'd reach a point where we would be labeling feminists as fascists. She calls her a fascist as she takes a picture with lesbians, a black woman, and several other feminists. Are you kidding me? The left are truly eating each other. Oh my God. Simply not being for the T and LGB is enough to label you an open fascist. Holy shit! I stopped paying attention to politics for 1 year. I come back and look how much the Overton window has shifted. Being pro-feminism, pro-LGB is no longer enough. It makes you wonder about all the potential groups that'll be forming in the next 10 to 15 years. What am I going to be considered then?
She is a fan of Matt Walsh, a fascist so into fascism that he self-describes as one and has made a career from accusing LGBTQ+ people of the very pedophilia he himself seems to be a fan of.
See, and this is why Jim Sterling chose the plausible deniability approach. J.K. Rowling didn't label herself an open fascist, but she follows an account that's an open fascist, apparently. So therefore, she is an open fascist. That's not how this works. That'd be like pointing to all the open communists Jim Sterling follows and then labeling Jim an open communist. Liking his work or following him does not mean they agree on everything, because I highly doubt someone like Matt Walsh agrees with any of J.K. Rowling's feminist views. Hell, the two have argued with each other before. If you want to call J.K. Rowling a transphobe, fine, but if you want to label her a fascist, be prepared for a potential lawsuit.
She's liked tweets from the abjectly abhorrent Libs of TikTok account.
Based? Based? Hello?
A notorious right-wing platform that outs queer people and is used to organise attacks against drag shows as well as threats against hospitals.
Okay. Show me.
She follows a Twitter account, guys! We got her! We got her! Look, I follow Libs of TikTok. I know they don't do what you're claiming. So many people follow Libs of TikTok, including people I never expected. A lot of those being lefties. Following a Twitter account doesn't mean anything. Jim really thought he scored a jackpot here. See, you follow somebody on Twitter and all of a sudden, people act like they know everything about you. Jim chooses to use this approach for their criticism of J.K. Rowling. Because let's face it, Jim is being lazy as hell.
She retweets unscientific drivel by queerphobes like Baroness Nicholson.
She retweeted, guys! She retweeted something! This is it! Exposed! We are seriously living through some very soft times afforded to us by strong men. When what someone retweets, or who they follow, or what they like is enough to get you upset about them, you're living a very privileged, pampered life. 50 plus years ago, men were concerned about possibly being drafted into a war they had no choice in participating in. 50 plus years later, men have to concern themselves about whether or not people accept their gender identity on social media.
She stands with Maya Forstater, who, after losing her job at a progressive organisation over demeaning anti-trans comments, has dedicated her life to combating trans rights.
Jim, do you even know what that's about? Maya lost her job for being critical of gender identity. That is not something that should be happening in the current day and age. And seeing as how J.K. Rowling is a feminist, of course she stood with her. She was wrongfully terminated for holding a belief. And you just say it so casually, like, yeah, it's perfectly fine to do that. No, it's not. In fact, I stand with her because at the end of the day, Maya won 3 of the claims in employment tribunal. It was ruled out that she was wrongfully discriminated for her beliefs. And after being fired the first time for just daring to challenge gender identity, can you blame her for making a movement afterwards? Most people would start a movement to prohibit this from ever happening again because it was wrong. How you're so nonchalantly okay with what happened to her is quite disturbing. Well, either that or you didn't actually do an ounce of research. You only posted a bunch of screenshots of tweets, articles, and just expect your audience to be dumb enough to go along with it. Oddly enough, you're making J.K. Rowling look like a good person here, supporting someone who was wrongfully terminated for a belief.
She once sent accidental transphobic profanity to a 9-year-old girl after pasting a comment from an anti-trans website she was reading and copying at the time.
Just listen to how disingenuous all of that was. First off, no, she didn't tweet to a 9-year-old on Twitter. 9-year-olds aren't supposed to be on Twitter. She tweeted to the 9-year-old's parent. The only thing you're right about was that it was an accident. Again, Jim Sterling is failing at being able to point to the horrendous things J.K. Rowling has said. And when you read what she accidentally copy and pasted in that tweet, none of it is transphobic. Not a single bit of it. I can't believe I have to show you the tweet and Jim Sterling couldn't do that for you. Because if they did, you'd probably see that it's not as bad as they're making it out to be. Because they're disingenuous.
She called criticism of this censorship and authoritarianism, seeming to defend her right to rope kids into her obsession.
Not even a few seconds ago, you pointed out how it was an accident. Now you're trying to make it seem intentional, like she's spreading her ideology to 9-year-old children. She's not. The only ones doing that is your side.
And she is obsessive. Scroll through her Twitter and you'll find that she thinks about trans people all day, every day.
I just did that, and do you know what I found? I found the complete opposite of what you're claiming. Searching up J.K. Rowling only brought up a bunch, and I mean a bunch, of tweets being made every single minute about how much people hate this woman. You want to say she's the obsessive one, but you're the one pointing to what she likes, who she follows, and what she retweets, or pictures of people she takes with. Are you kidding me? So far, everything you've done to paint this woman as an obsessive transphobe isn't working. You're the ones running her tweets through a microscope, and half of it is stuff she didn't even say herself.
She herself has fought against Scotland's gender recognition reforms, scaremongering and spreading outright lies about a law that would simply make being trans a tiny bit easier. She still has the nerve to act offended at accusations of phobia while literally campaigning against our basic rights and legal dignity.
You're talking about when Scotland proposed dropping the age of limit for a gender recognition certificate from 18 to 16, right? That's what you're talking about? Or how they want to make it so you don't require a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and all JK did was look at the possible negatives of this outcome?
At first, she tried to keep up the mask of someone who supports trans people but just has concerns and wanted to protect women's spaces, a long-time gender-critical dog whistle.
My god, Jim, she is a feminist! That is what she does! Oh my god! That's not a dog whistle, that's a Jim Sterling whistle, because you're the only one that can hear it. People are going to really hate me saying this, but we need people like JK. No ideology should go unchallenged. If everyone just blindly accepted, something would clearly be wrong. This is not hatred and it's not bigoted. It's a legitimate concern. Women have worked hard and long enough to get to where they are. And now a man can simply put on a dress and try to participate in everything they've built after working hard for years to achieve it. There's nothing wrong with women wanting to be recognized as women. Jim Sterling wasn't the one sitting there fighting for their rights. Jim wasn't the one forming women's sports associations. Jim doesn't live through what women live through, yet they want that type of recognition.
She claimed her liking of transphobic tweets was just her fingers slipping, honest, and now she's an ardent supporter of Helen Joyce.
While we're trying to get through to the decision makers, we have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. Every one of those people is basically, you know, a huge problem to a sane world. Like, if you've got people that, and whether they're transitioned, whether they're happily transitioned, whether they're unhappily transitioned, whether they're detransitioned, if you've got people who've dissociated from their sex in some way, every one of those people is someone who needs special accommodation. Every one of them is a difficulty.
Oh my god! Wow. It takes some balls to say something like that in the current day, which is kind of frightening to think about. I definitely don't agree with Helen on the idea of limiting the amount of people who can transition, unless it involves minors, of course. But at the very least, she gave a logical, non-hateful reason as to why. But there is truth to what she is saying. Lately, society has been going out of its way to accommodate every single gender identity that has been revealed in the last 10 years. Oh, sorry, less than 10 years, really. And we have been seeing the results of that. And indeed, they've been very difficult to manage. Their requests have gotten absolutely absurd. Even then, all of that was spliced up without the full context to it. But most importantly, none of it is coming out of J.K. Rowling's mouth. You have literally said more about Libs of TikTok, Matt Walsh, Helen Joyce, and Maya Forstater than anything you've pointed out about J.K. Rowling. This has gotten beyond pathetic now.
Oh dear.
That's someone J.K. Rowling agrees with, platforms, is a friend of. Indeed, the people Rowling champions are f***ing monsters.
Yes, Jim, I'm very convinced that the women fighting for actual women's rights are monsters. How dare they formally disagree and hold a different belief? Jesus Christ, this type of infighting you don't really see from the right-wingers too often. They quite literally put you through a purity test to see if you're a true lefty these days. What's gonna happen the day lefties finally hold an ideology Jim doesn't agree with? You know what's gonna happen? They're gonna get canceled by the exact same community they kissed ass to. And seeing as how Jim is using guilt by association, you can pretty much dismiss most of the claims.
Here's GC figurehead Posey Parker telling cis men to patrol women's bathrooms.
Oh my god, no, we're skipping that. I'm done with this part. Unless you actually have audio clips or screenshots of JK being what you're claiming, I ain't even gonna brush up on the rest of these points. We've already wasted a lot of precious time getting absolutely nowhere.
Her slimy, cowardly behaviour goes back years. What's shown in this video so far is just from stuff I started collecting in the past year because I knew this subject was inevitable.
Bullshit, that's stuff you collected within the last 10 minutes before you hit record, let's be real. And you couldn't even find the worst of it. It's about as lazy as your editing with all the stock images you've been reusing for the past 5 years. At least my editing has vastly improved. I change up my art frequently, and my commentary has significantly gotten better. But the minute Jim reached 1 million subs, they stopped trying.
While she's been careful enough not to use plainly direct hate speech, I don't think her deniability is close to plausible anymore. Look at the lies she tells, the fascists she supports. Look at how much she talks about us. This is not what someone who doesn't loathe us does. This is the activity of someone with a genuine, deep-seated problem.
Oh, believe me, I've been looking, and yet for some reason I keep seeing the complete opposite. All you've done is blamed her for things other people have said. Guilt by association is not the road you want to go down. It won't accomplish anything, it'll make you look obsessive, and you're doing more harm to your movement than actually helping it. The only thing you're doing is encouraging more people to call her Based K. Rowling. Had Jim removed their personal feelings from this video, they might have been able to bring up some good legitimate arguments, but no, they instead hit record and spoke from the heart.
You don't have to believe me. You can believe the Harry Potter cast members who've condemned her.
Trust me, Jim, not believing you is the easiest thing in the world to do. And I do love how you don't point to the actors of Harry Potter that actually did stand with J.K. Rowling and still respect her and continue to support her. Hell, a couple of them had good things to say too.
You can believe the historians who've catalogued a clear timeline of her descent into frothing bigotry.
Do you know what that word means?
Yep.
Yeah, what's that mean?
Historians? What? Politico, the website? You're referring to them as historians? That's just a German-owned political newspaper company. And due to their bias, they can never actually properly document anything. And to think we're not even at the worst parts of the video yet.
Or, if you'd rather, believe the Republican politicians who are actually citing her words in their anti-LGBTQ+ legislative efforts.
Yeah, well, at the very least, they're citing someone with some logical arguments. Even then, what is she supposed to do? How is she supposed to take responsibility for this one? She doesn't have the power to stop people from citing her? And what exactly did he cite? Well, this is what he said. To say in the words of J.K. Rowling this past week where she wrote, "All I'm asking, all I want is for similar empathy, similar understanding to be extended to the many millions of women whose sole crime is wanting their concerns to be heard without receiving threats or abuse. Let's work together to get equality. This bill does not do it in this form." What is so wrong about that? I don't understand. After we've seen numerous people fired from their jobs for being critical of gender identity, this is a legitimate concern. This is honestly the perfect thing to cite when it comes to quoting JK. All you're doing by bringing up these screenshots of articles that you didn't actually read is presenting to us takes that are honestly very tame and pretty based. Your video heavily relies on an audience that doesn't fact check what you say.
Believe the virulently right-wing male supremacy group Honey Badgers who call JKR their queen.
Yes, of course. The Honey Badgers, a movement mainly run by women fighting for men's rights. Total male supremacy. What is it with Jim having the biggest problem with female groups that don't align with his beliefs? Are you starting to notice the trend? So far, it seems like Jim has a big personal issue with cisgendered women. To label a group run by women as male supremacy is insane. Absolutely not a single thought put into this video. Y'all wanted women to have freedoms for so long, and when they finally got the freedom to express their own political beliefs, y'all turned on them faster than you did on gamers.
Believe the photos of her at GC meetings.
Let's see, she took a photo with feminists, lesbians, and a black woman. Oh yeah, I'm so convinced this is a fascist. Way to go, Jim!
Believe the trans exclusionary women's shelter she set up to replace the trans inclusive women's shelter that her movement bullied and harassed out of operation.
She literally opens up a shelter for women who have received abuse of the worst kind, and it's not good enough. You really think women who are victims want to be around what they still consider to be men? Do you have any idea what happened the last time a women-only relief shelter was opened? It got vandalized. People were writing "TERFs go home, you are not welcome," "kill TERFs," "trans power," all over the shelter after it was defunded. Oh yeah, and they nailed a dead rat to the door, simply giving cisgendered women a place to feel welcomed, safe, is no longer allowed because it's considered bigoted. That is how delusional this movement is.
Or maybe just believe J.K. Rowling when she says it is dangerous to assert that any category of people deserves a blanket presumption of innocence. She meant trans people, of course. But if she's right, then hell, she gets no presumption either.
What's wrong with that statement? No, seriously. What's wrong with that statement? Is it now considered wrong to not assume any single group is innocent? Are we really supposed to throw rational thought out the window? She is right. It is dangerous to just assume there are groups of people that are completely innocent.
The answer can't always be that anyone from a marginalized community is automatically right, trump card, mic drop, end of discussion. Because we're literally experimenting on children.
Haven't you ever heard the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Thank you for giving me that quote, Delta. Do you have any idea how many goodwill movements have caused harm because people presumed innocence? Obviously, nobody should also be considered guilty by default. And no, she wasn't just talking about trans people. She said any category. Jesus Christ. A healthy dose of skepticism can go a long way, Jim.
She is a TERF, loud and proud, Merry Turfmas, as she would say, and has said.
Oh dear.
Yeah, well, I hate to tell you this, but that TERF has done far more for women than you have, Jim. She's built shelters. She's donated to charity, to movements. I get it. You have a personal vendetta against her because her beliefs go against your existence. I imagine living as a trans person is not easy. So for you, it feels very personal when it comes to J.K. Rowling. But for those of us who are not living a day-to-day life as a trans person, it's blatantly obvious to see that she hasn't done you any actual harm and has actually contributed to society while all you do is contribute to your vanity. So as far as I'm concerned, she can be as turfy as she wants if all she's doing is continuing to improve society in ways that you will never do. TERF is now a word I'm going to brush off whenever I hear because of you.
I've been out as a trans femme now for over 2 years. With my coming out, much about the world around me has changed, be it through my new perspective or the difference in treatment I receive. There's a lot of good. I'm complimented by sweet old ladies who like my boots, I'm hit on by lesbians in Leeds, people in general say nice things about me and I feel more comfortable saying them back. Mostly, I'm more confident. I like who I am and how I look, things that weren't true. Are you sure?
No, Jim. To each his own. To each his own. But if only old ladies were hitting on me and lesbians hitting on me, and not the attractive people I actually want, I'd seriously consider downing a bottle of cyanide. But at the very least, I genuinely do feel happy for you that you do receive some positivity in your life, because God knows we could all use it. If you are genuinely happy with how your life is now, after transitioning, then I applaud you, I congratulate you, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I'm in no position to say what you're doing is making you worse and unhappy. Only you are the true judge of that. But as a viewer that dropped out a while ago, it doesn't seem like it. You're a lot more unhinged, a lot angrier in your videos. You legitimately seem very unhappy about losing your subscribers, and as a result, the quality of the content has greatly diminished. You don't seem motivated to do this anymore. And I'm only speaking as someone that used to watch your content, not someone that's there living with you day to day to see for my own 2 eyes. As happy as you are, viewers themselves seem very displeased with your attitude about all of it. I know coming out as trans isn't the problem, far from it. Otherwise, channels like Blair White wouldn't be as popular as they are. You're quite possibly one of the few channels I've ever seen not grow for coming out as trans.
But while good things happened, and to be honest, 90% of people really don't care if I'm trans or not, there are negatives. It's no secret what it did to my career.
You have done that yourself.
The way in which I'm criticised online changed. Suddenly I was diagnosed by commenters as mentally ill, my age comes up a lot now, and my writing is tone policed, accused of being rude and screeching where it wasn't before.
Well, yeah, of course, Jim, because you changed. Your approach to making content didn't get better, it got worse. It got too preachy for people. It wasn't who you were years ago. The person you are now is not what people subscribed for. And I can confirm, as someone who watched you for years, I noticed a significant tonal change. And it wasn't sudden, it happened at least 3 months before you ever came out as trans. What actually did it for me was the insanely cringe rants against capitalism. Jim's constant victim mentality, while living like a king, completely unaware of how good they have it, pushed me to unsubscribe. In this case, I side with the viewers over the biased content creator themselves.
But most of all, the world has become scarier.
Jim. Transphobe.
Where?
Scarier because of the right-wingers calling us all groomers and engaging in violence against us.
Motherfucker, take it outside. If you want to call me sir again, I will show you a f***ing sir. I apologize. Motherfucker. I apologize now.
Scarier because of the GOP and Tories scapegoating us and legislating our rights away with increased ferocity.
Skill issue.
Scarier because of media outlets like the BBC engaging in transphobia as a matter of policy. Scarier because of the people JKR has emboldened with her support, the gender criticals who preach eugenics and partake in phrenology to call for our eradication. Scarier because culturally and legally and increasingly physically, we've been staring down the barrel of genocide for a long, long time.
What? The world has become scarier? Really? Were you able to do what you're doing now 30 years ago? Were there pride flags on every corner of the street in every single major city? Was trans representation being shoehorned into every form of media? Were you allowed to athletically compete against other cisgendered women? Did you even have a dedicated month? No, apparently what makes the current time scarier than it was for trans people even 30 years ago is that there's more disagreements now than ever. The audacity to say that they're facing genocide. Oh my god, shut up. Stop! Being transphobic has been put on a higher pedestal than being racist. Being labeled a transphobe is enough to get you fired from your job. What are you talking about? There's goddamn trans kids in our media. It's been glamorized beyond belief, and it's still not enough for them. As long as there is one individual that doesn't agree with them, they will never, ever be happy. They've been handed the key to the city, and yet they think they're being led to Auschwitz. No, Jim, the only barrel you've been staring down for the last couple of years is a cream-filled donut. The only thing you're a victim of is sugar.
If you're not trans, if you're not so aware of how there's a new attack on us and our rights multiple times a day, every day, you won't quite know how bad it is. It's horrific. It's exhausting.
Jim, this is when you log off of Twitter, okay? Of course, many of the accounts you follow are going to post about it. The amount of articles you consume does not reflect the real world rate at which it happens. You don't actually have a legitimate reason to be scared or worried it's gonna happen to you. Now, I could bring up some statistics, but considering Jim never brought any, I don't feel like I'm obligated to.
We're less than 2% of the population, but we're called an epidemic. We're demonized in the press with extremely disproportionate coverage, and wealthy, powerful people like JKR can't stop thinking about us.
Less than 2%, and yet your group is represented in her game. Funny how that is, right? Less than 2%, and y'all are still the headline of every single article. Less than 2%, and yet you can get people fired for misgendering you. Being the less than 2% that you are, you should consider it an achievement. How much representation you get in media, politics, entertainment, the workforce. Hell, now I wish I was a 2%er. But instead, us Hispanics have been put in the back for a long time. Instead, now the white man has chosen to tell us we must refer to ourselves as Latinx. Y'all have it good. Real good.
Look, some people might be delighted to hear this from me, but I'm going to admit it plainly. I'm afraid. I'm really, really afraid.
That was scary.
You? Why? You have a significant weight advantage over any attacker, and you have a male skeletal frame. You're pretty durable. You do pro wrestling, something that could quite possibly cripple you for life at any given moment, and this is what you're afraid of? You should be more afraid about your sugar intake.
And every day, For months, I've seen a video game that directly benefits one of the largest sources of that fear promoted on the PlayStation Store and Xbox Live, hyped up by the gaming press and championed by a community with a long-running vein of transphobia running through it that goes back to the hateful protests against a bit-part trans NPC in Dragon Age Inquisition.
You what? You're afraid of a video game? Oh my god! I mean, at the very least, we're finally talking about the game, and somehow Jim Sterling is gonna try and link all of that rhetoric she fed us earlier to this game. Jim, have you seriously still not figured out why people are unsubscribing from you yet? You were at the forefront defending video games from being accused of causing violence, and now you want to sit here and tell people that this video game is somehow causing real-world harm. You can't do that, Jim. I'm sorry. But that right there, that drastic shift is what's getting people to leave in droves.
Every day, a constant reminder that we as trans people have so few friends, so few allies. Every day, a reminder that the game industry and community are contemptuous.
Oh yeah, y'all have no friends but are somehow in every single piece of entertainment. Totally buy into that idea. Yeah, sure, Jim. The giant Democratic Party totally doesn't have your back.
You know, as much as y'all gamers TM have tried, you've not owned me by posting the glowing review scores for Hogwarts Legacy or boasting about its sales success.
I disagree.
The whole TM branding of gamers, it's not a meme that really works. But you know what it does work on? The LGBT movement. And, wrong. Everyone posting how successful this game is owning you. It's a sign that your boycott was a complete joke. You just sat there and told us that you're basically afraid of this game. Of course I'm gonna take the opportunity to say you got owned.
That just proves what I knew. That people don't give a f***. That's not new information. It's not a surprise. It's half of the course. That's all.
Watch your tone, Jim, because I could care even less. Don't tempt me.
Those of you actively trying to harass me over it aren't the actual offensive ones. No, the offense comes purely from the self-described allies who want to have it both ways, who want to play their wizard game and get really upset when criticized over it.
Just listen to how insane you are. Nobody, not a single person, should expect to receive criticism for touching this game. Only a Sith deals in absolutes, Jim. No one should feel pressured to take a side. People wanting to buy and play a game and not be harassed for it is completely normal. What's not normal is thinking it's completely okay to harass that person because they want to enjoy the wizard game. To put pressure on their back and say they're not an ally of yours because they bought this game is not okay. Do you have any idea what sort of harm this actually causes the trans community? It makes them look like bullies. Oh yes, you can buy your wizard game all you want, but don't expect me not to make your life miserable for it. Go seek therapy. No, for real, Jim, go seek therapy. This is not okay.
All the media outlets who justify their uncritical reviews by having the f***ing nerve to compare our protests against them to f***ing Gamergate.
Yeah, I agree with Jim on this one. That is not a fair comparison. Your movement is far, far worse. Y'all are out here getting people fired, causing members of your own community to off themselves, sending hate mobs to people who decided to buy a video game. Gamergate should have stayed alive because this is what they were trying to combat.
Transphobes, you need to up your game because none of you will ever be as insulting as a self-styled cis ally who wants trans people's permission to not take a stand.
Oh my god! The people Jim is the most upset at aren't the actual transphobes. It's the people that actually support his movement, that actually accept him, that are inclusive. One video game purchase is what sent Jim to getting more upset at them than the people who actually say horrendous things to him. This is pure insanity. The bridges Jim is willing to burn down over a video game. What's this whole talk about permission? You're not entitled to people taking a stand on what they choose to. You're straight up speaking like a full-blown narcissist right now. To expect people who aren't trans to be as invested as you are in the movement doesn't make any sense. You have absolutely no right, None to be upset with them. Zero. You are not owed anything. And you are seriously one sick individual.
Oh, and I love how the same Gamers TM who spent nearly 10 years calling game reviewers corrupt suddenly started trusting and touting.
So anyways, the next 3 minutes is a rant about Jim and reviews, and honestly, it doesn't really serve any purpose to the overall video. I'm not gonna sit here and respond to it. Let's move on back to the cringy rant.
I know I'm not changing any minds here. The bigots and Potter fans and people who just want to enjoy a video game made their decision. The allies who want to separate art from artists or hate JKR but just always wanted to Skyrim or Hogwarts made their decision. And regardless of intent, all of you look exactly the same to J.K. Rowling.
You really think J.K. Rowling thinks people bought this game because of her views and not because Harry Potter is a very popular franchise? Are you sure? At least well over 90% of the people who purchased this game probably don't even know about her viewpoints. Yeah, you're not a transphobe, but if you bought this game, J.K. Rowling probably thinks you are. You have nothing. No arguments. Nada.
See, while people have tried to justify Hogwarts Legacy by saying JKR had no direct involvement, that doesn't change the fact she makes direct money from sales. More importantly, it doesn't change the truly insidious aspect of Harry Potter's continued success. JKR takes it as explicit endorsement of her views. She thinks the success of Harry Potter means people agree with her, and she's said so before.
Okay, Jim, other than your eating habits, this habit of yours of just grabbing screenshots of articles as blanket statements has to stop. Because I looked at that article. J.K. Rowling was referring to letters written to her by fans, in which 90% agreed with her. She isn't saying 90% of her overall fans are agreeing with her, but just that 90% of letters sent to her are in agreement. Either way, it doesn't matter because you know the majority of people buying this game aren't doing it to support her beliefs. Consumers will consume regardless of the info available. And those consumers include you, Jim.
There is no difference in hers or any other TERF's mind between the people who bought Hogwarts because they wanted a fun wizard game and the people spite buying it to demonstrate the powerlessness trans people already feel. Intent doesn't matter. You're all just supporters to her. You are all permission.
Really now, powerlessness? It's not healthy to feel powerless over people purchasing a wizard game. Because if you were in power, what would you do, Jim? Ban this product? Prohibit J.K. Rowling from making money ever again? Deplatform her? Call me crazy, but maybe staying at the 2% is a good idea. If y'all received power for even a second, God knows what would happen. You're simply gonna have to live with the fact that not everything is in your control. The power hunger crave is kind of frightening.
This is why you aren't an ally if you buy Hogwarts Legacy. No, buying the game doesn't make you a transphobe, and I'm tired of hearing the self-martyring whinging about that.
Question, Jim, if we're not allies, then what are we? What is the opposite of an ally? Huh? Can you tell me what the opposite of an ally is? Are we your foes? Are we your enemies? I thought the transphobes were your enemies. So if we're your enemies, does that mean we're transphobes? Because even though you ain't explicitly saying it, you most certainly are insinuating it. You just told everyone we're viewed equally in the eyes of J.K. Rowling if we purchase this. So just say it, Jim. Just say it. Get it off your chest. People who bought this game, you consider transphobes. Just say it.
I'm not saying you're transphobic for buying Hogwarts Legacy. I'm saying you're not an ally. You handed that card in because you couldn't do the barest minimum. You couldn't make the simplest stand. It's not that hard to not buy a AAA video game. You chose a product over people.
And now f***ing do it again! Just like you have with every single cell phone purchase. This guilt tripping is not gonna work, Jim. You can't place an ultimatum on anyone. And are you ignoring the fact that more people purchased this game unaware of the controversy than those that did? Are people suddenly not supposed to do their job of reviewing a game to take a stand for 2% of people? Do you consider the implications of every purchase you make? No, you don't. And you want to know how I know you don't? Because earlier you were drinking a can of Monster Energy drink, and that company had 6 women filing a lawsuit over sexual abuse within the company. And now that you know this info, Jim, are you gonna boycott? Are you gonna stop buying Monster Energy drink? I can't believe you chose calories over women. How dare you, Jim? And you know what? Since you're forcing everyone else to take a stance, I'm gonna force you to take a stance right now. Either drop Monster Energy drink or you support sexism. Let's push Jim Sterling's principles to their limit. This should be fun.
And in doing so, you helped J.K. Rowling say things like this when asked how it feels to have alienated so many queer fans.
I read my most recent royalty checks and find the pain goes away pretty quickly.
That's what you do. You empower a fascist-supporting transphobe.
That's not how this works, Jim. You of all people I expect better from. People are not responsible for what J.K. Rowling says. Your average Joe working a minimum wage job, scraping pennies to buy this game is not the reason J.K. Rowling says what she says. You cannot hold random people accountable for this woman. Are you out of your mind? Are you really willing to hold every single person accountable that purchased this game for what she said? Because that's physically impossible. Even if everyone didn't purchase this game, she would still be rich and freely saying whatever she wants. You really think not buying this game would have caused J.K. Rowling to stop? Plus, the majority of things you're showing me that she said were said long before Hogwarts came out and will continue to be said long after Hogwarts is forgotten. It's why the boycott was stupid. It legitimately would have gotten nothing done. Y'all would have still been butthurt and felt like it wasn't enough because it's never enough for you.
Some of you celebrate that you've done it.
Nah, I'm celebrating because you're pissed off and I like it.
Some of you wring your hands and excuse it. The result's the same.
For the love of God, Jim, leave those people alone already. They just want to play video.
So enjoy. Not a single one of you are under any obligation to refuse this game. I'm not demanding it of you, and I'm not going to say you're an inherently bad person for it. But I do not trust you. I can't count on you. Can't think you have our backs. I can't feel safe with you.
I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm just saying I don't trust you. I'm just saying I don't feel safe around you. You seriously don't feel safe around people for the purchase of a video game? Jim, I'm serious. Go seek help immediately. This type of manipulation is nearly psychotic. This has gone far past just a purity test now. Not a single one of my trans friends has said any sort of ridiculousness like this to me, which lets you know that Jim is indeed the crazy one here. What you're asking for, Jim, are not allies, but cult members, let's face it. For God's sake, you're reminding me of the religious moms that thought playing Dungeons and Dragons was participating in Satanism. Can we, for the love of God, please stop regressing? Just imagine telling someone you don't feel safe around them because of the purchase of a video game. You have no right to complain about how you don't have a lot of friends when you act this way.
And sorry, but you don't get to feel hurt by that. You get to enjoy your media product. I get to remember every digital storefront that took a Hogwarts sponsorship, every games journalist that promoted it, every platform and company that embraced it, and I get to remember that when Pride Month rolls around and the performative allyship begins, your rainbow logos won't count for shit.
See, this is how I knew Jim was a trans trender and not actually someone who represents the community. Do you seriously believe in your heart that the Pride logos ever meant anything? Did you really think it was nothing more than a marketing scheme? Did you feel more validated by the rainbow flag used as basically a product placement? Pride Month has basically become like Valentine's Day, an excuse for companies to make more money for a period of time. And you completely bought into it. Earlier you were making that gamers TM joke, when in reality the LGBT movement is legit branded for 1 month of the year and treated like a trademark. And you all flock to it like you're not blindly consuming.
It hardly needs to be said, but any of you who claimed you bought it to support the developers can especially get in the bin. Oh, they worked hard and should be supported. That's probably the dumbest attempt to lionize consumerism I've ever seen. I've seen this excuse so much, and I'm like, how dare you? How dare you lie to me so f***ing brazenly? You don't buy games just to support developers, you buy them because you want to play them. Tell me, do you buy literally every single game that's ever made and released? If you're motivated purely by dev support, that's what you do, right? Every game is developed by game developers, so why aren't you buying every game? Every single one? Get the f*** out of here with that blatant bullshit. Of course it's bollocks from a results standpoint too. The devs got paid already. They get paid for their work up front. Unlike JKR, they don't get royalty checks. They're not the ones supported by your purchase. She is. Warner Brothers is. Those are the beneficiaries. As we've discussed on this show before, game studios mostly live or die regardless of the success of one game, and thanks to the way public companies work, they're sometimes hurt by it, as layoffs often follow an influx of revenue to maintain the illusion of financial growth. Corporations don't operate based on customer support. If they did, we'd get more single-player games and fewer ones based around financially exploiting a minority of whale players.
Jim, what the hell are you talking about? Supporting this game can ensure a sequel, which ensures funding to that studio to make the next project. Do you know how many families will be supported by that type of funding? Granted, you are correct, the majority of profit does go up to the company, and royalty checks get sent out to J.K. Rowling. But in return, people receive full-time jobs that support their living. I do, however, agree that it's a very weak reason to buy the game, but are you seriously wondering why people aren't supporting every game after saying that? Are you stupid? Do you think it's possible for people to afford every single video game ever made? Do you not realize how moronic that sounds? Yeah, and either way, this can be flipped on you. If you truly care about the trans community, why is this the one game that you're choosing to boycott and put all your energy into? Why aren't you doing it towards all games, Jim? Do you have any idea how many of the games you play are developed and published by people who share similar beliefs to JK? It would be physically impossible for you to boycott every game, just like it would be physically impossible for people to support every game. Why do you continue to deal in absolutes? Is Emperor Palpatine behind you?
You're not supporting the devs that tossed in a token trans character called Sir Owen Orion, explicitly to try and steer us all away from the subject of J.K. Rowling.
Do you see what I meant by earlier? When I said the devs screwed themselves over by pandering? Just look at Jim's reaction. It's never ever going to be enough, no matter what they do, even if they're not associated with JK, even if they actually do believe in trans rights, even if they put a character in the game for them, it's still seen as a slap in the face. You cannot win with them.
Support wasn't even your intent. That's a retroactive justification for something you were always going to do.
Stop using the word justification. Nobody is justifying anything. That is all happening in your head. See, I can gaslight too.
And honestly, any of you who've come at me in the past few months with that excuse or any other excuse that attempts to paint your purchase of a video game in a noble light, you're not noble. You're not a fucking hero. Play the game if you must, but don't you dare tell me you did it for any reason other than self-service.
We never had any plans of doing that. Nobody was expecting to ever be put on the spot for buying this game, or talking about it, or even playing it. Most of us weren't aware there was such a burning hatred for JK in the first place. Yeah, we knew she wasn't liked, but we didn't know it was this bad, this obsessive, this unhealthy. We never expected our purchase to scare you, Jim.
Don't you ever look to me for validation, expect me to assuage your guilt, toss hypothetical scenarios at me that you think allow you to have it both ways. Just play your f***ing wizard game. How you feel about that is not my problem. You clearly decided how we feel isn't yours. Cis feelings aren't our responsibility.
Jesus Christ, Jim! Are you playing a character? I've seen a lot of people in your comment section typing, "I haven't seen you in a while, Jim. Is this a parody? What's going on?" I will never in my life look to you for validation. You seriously need to get over yourself right now. You sound like a child, and you are literally throwing a tantrum. The last time I saw this behavior was in the 6th grade. You're goddamn right your feelings were ignored. Look at your behavior. Is that really going to convince anyone not to buy this game? You are being completely unreasonable. And over a video game of all things. You are a grown-ass adult. Start acting like it. This is not acceptable behavior for someone rounding 40, let alone a good age to start your pro wrestling career. And speaking of pro wrestling career, the wrestling promotion Rise Wrestling cut ties with 2 of the commentators for misgendering Jim Sterling. Granted, they were told to stop several times before being cut from the commentary and removed from the promotion. There's wrestling's bright future for you guys. Not even Triple H will be able to stop this future insanity.
It's so telling that the only real coverage of alleged harassment in games media this week has been about cis streamers getting upset at some mild pushback.
Did anybody else catch how Jim explicitly shows disregard for cisgendered people like they're a lesser subject to talk about? You know, we got feelings too, Jim. We just know how to take better control of them.
It's a really old play. Whenever trans people advocate for themselves, we're painted as unreasonable bullies. Unsurprisingly, I've been asked to answer for the alleged harassment because minorities are always expected to take responsibility for each other. You know what? I'll answer it when I can go a day online without someone saying something truly vile about me, when I can stream without harassment myself, when I can post a selfie without being called a man or getting some other derogatory comment, when what trans people go through gets as much attention in the press, and when I feel people give as much of a shit about all of us as one cis person. If all that happens, I'll prostrate myself before you on behalf of all transes everywhere.
No, Jim, that's very unnecessary. I don't want you to prostrate in front of me because then it'll be very hard to move you off the ground. Please, that's not necessary. Your demands are ridiculous because they will never, ever be met. The only way it could ever happen is if it was mandated legally and people had no choice. And in order to do that, you would have to heavily filter and monitor all language, and that is physically impossible. And in my opinion, immoral. The one thing that you did request that already happens to an insane degree is all the media focus on trans issues. It's the hot topic every single month, week, day, hour, minute, and you would have to be lying to yourself to say it isn't so. You can be given every right in the book. The only thing you can't ever be given is people's validation and acceptance, especially when you're not willing to equally give it out. You have accomplished absolutely nothing. This type of message is not helping the trans community. Please, I have very good friends who are trans, and they are nothing like this. They are insanely edgy and don't even come close to sharing this mentality. I understand Jim has a very loud voice, but please do not take it as the voice of reason for this movement.
Until then, this'll do.
Checked out the big one that they're hailing as like the innocent streamer who got harassed off of the live stream. And what I have learned is that y'all genuinely think that accountability and basic criticism is the same thing as harassment and discrimination.
Is this your girl, Jim? Is this your girl? Really? You're relying on her to debunk what those 3 streamers faced? Because she only talks about one of them. Nah, I think we're good. Let's move on. Give us some closing statements. This video is already the longest one I've ever made.
A boycott is not what I wanted nor expected. What most of us wanted was to simply point out why supporting a Hogwarts Legacy is harmful, to at least get good people to think about the implications, to be heard on this, and to find out who our allies really were. We certainly found out about that last one. We don't have many, and we're sadly not shocked. For me, it's not about stopping you buying Hogwarts, but to get you to accept the accountability of it. I know many of you want to consume guilt-free, but I'm not the girl who's going to condone that. It's really quite simple. If you buy it, you're not a trans ally. Yes, it's that stark an either-or choice, and this is coming from someone who rejects the binary whenever possible. You might not be against us, but you're either with us, or you aren't. Have fun Skyrimming a Hogwarts, and Merry Turfmas.
That is literally not at all what you displayed throughout this entire video. Quite the opposite. You didn't use this to see who your allies were, you used it to see who your enemies were. Face it. So all along, it wasn't about trying to stop us from buying the game. It was much worse than that. It was trying to guilt trip us into not buying the game, using manipulation to get what you want. And you're still doing it right now. I don't care if you don't condone my behavior or the behavior of anyone else who bought this game. You have no right to be upset about people consuming guilt-free when you do it yourself. Trying to place it in the minds of people that they're linked directly to transphobia because they bought this game is sick, twisted, and demented. Thank God nobody gave two shits and didn't buy into any of it. The world's a lot more sane than I thought. But Jim's attempt to put an ultimatum on people, telling them they're either with them or not through the purchase of a video game. You may sit there and say your whole goal wasn't to get people not to buy this game, but if that's the case, why did you even bother to still try and put pressure on people? It's me or the video game. Was you for the entirety of this video. It's so well documented right here for everyone to see. And also the greatest mistake you made here was assuming everyone would want to be an ally. Because if this is just one of the steps they have to make to be considered one, they're probably going to be hesitant because they're imagining how crazy the demands are going to get in the future. Well, I mean, that's the nicest way I can put it. In reality, the majority of people laugh their asses off. Not a single person ever considered you. It would be ridiculous to assume the world revolves around your movement and you as an individual. When a video game is enough to make or break your relationship with people, you have far greater issues to manage than your gender identity. I know to many of you this may seem like a hardcore political grift coming from me, but it's not. It's just a long overdue criticism of the trans movement. I know this won't put me in the best of terms with YouTube. I highly doubt monetization is gonna be a thing for this one. So instead, consider becoming a member of this channel. It's only $2, and you'll get access to some glorious custom emojis. I legitimately put a lot, and I mean a lot of work into this video, and I don't want it to be a financial flop for all that effort. You can hear my physical exhaustion. I am tired. Daddy is really exhausted. Those red pills leave you with a bad crash. Nobody told me this. Well, anyways, I already asked you to sub earlier. So with that being said, thank you all so very much for clicking on this video and even watching a minute of it. I'll see you very soon with something shorter and easier. Bye-bye.
If I knew that I didn't wait on this story, for Tango Plays would have made a video roasting me for about 30 minutes.
You're goddamn right.
So much you wanna play with you.